Hey, what's up, guys? My name is June Hlongwane. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So, the meeting between President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the president of South Africa, as well as President Donald Trump, finally took place. Long anticipated, long awaited meet up of these two nations. And leading up to this meeting, I must say there was a lot of discussion, and a lot of it I quite agreed with in terms of what would be put on the table when these two leaders eventually meet. A lot of discussions in terms of what Trump would want to bring to the table, what South Africa's angle could be, what they should focus on and all of that. But for me personally, speaking for myself, I really was not prepared for how it went down. Let me just put it like that. I wasn't prepared for how it went down. Very different in terms of the style of how everything takes place in the Oval Office. Completely different to how things happen here at home, where you've got a room filled with media, journalists, like just knowing that the stream as it was happening live was showed to the entire world. Anyone in the world could watch as it was happening live. Hence, before I give my commentary, I just want to say that I'm really proud of the entire South African delegation for having represented us or having been in that space. I can only imagine. Sitting at home, watching it live, I just felt like this is quite the show. So in retrospect, I think it's 2-3 days since the meeting took place. There has been a lot of commentary, a lot of, opinion. Some are calling it an ambush. Some are calling the meeting the roast of Ramaphosa. I'm not quite sure about the angle on ambush, because ambush would mean that someone is taken by surprise. They don't see it coming. They have no idea, no clue whatsoever, which I think there's a question mark on my side that, of course, President Ramaphosa and his delegation, especially people at the level of Ronald Lamola and the minister and the presidency, Skhumbuzo Ntshavheni, at that level, they should have known. They should have been prepared, right, in my opinion. So I'm not quite in agreement with the angle of ambush. So on the part of preparedness, I do agree with the sentiment that there seemed to have been a lack of preparedness. We do not know. I have not seen after or post reaction from the South African delegation, but it does seem like there was just a lack of preparedness. The way I look at it, after the fact, of course, I'm looking at this in retrospect. In the moment, I probably would have also been quite confused. But the way I look at it is that in the preparedness, there should have been some sort of consideration for the fact that Donald Trump is definitely going to chair the meeting. Right? He was the chairperson. He was the one who was getting the journalist saying, cue the video, dim the lights. You have a question. That guy, MSNBC, ABC State Network, you are not going to ask questions because you're asking stupid questions. Shut up. Trump was definitely in control. He was definitely going to chair the meeting, but the focus should not have just been on Donald Trump, in my opinion. Of course, you're interacting with him. The dialogue is directly with him. But the notion, or at least keep at the back of your mind, that the entire world is watching. If you take the room alone, we had Donald Trump and we had some people, I do not know the entire sort of circle of Trump and his administration currently, but you had the J.D. Vance in there, you had your Marco Rubio, Elon Musk, who was standing next to Elon Musk. Who is this person in the world? So this African delegation, I think, missed an opportunity to say we are dialoguing or engaging with Trump directly, but we know that other people are listening. For South Africa, this really does put a lot of pressure on us as a population, in my opinion. With the world watching, because now probably South Africa is the biggest topic for this week, hands down, right? But it's not really for good things. It's not for good reasons, right? We all heard what happened. Murder, farm murders, general murder, violent in general for all groups and all of that. We all heard what happened. So we are topical. We are in people's minds and people's hearts, but not for good reasons. Now, this puts a lot of responsibility to the South African population. And if I could get to each and every single person and speak to each and every single person and say, guys, we really need to think about, for the next 3 elections, including the local elections that's coming up in 2026, I think the world will really be interested in the direction that we take, given the issues that were there. Because to be honest, Ramaphosa sat there as the leader of the country, but it was clear to the world that he might not be the best that we have, or he might not be the best man for the job. That was pretty clear. We can go around the bush. It was clear that he is not the best man for the job. What does that mean for you and I? We need to take responsibility and show the world that South Africa is serious about being a country that is built on democracy, built on freedom, built on accommodating different groups, different cultures, working together. We are also serious about growing. We're serious about growing our tiny economy and making something of ourselves, right? We won the World Cup, 3-4 times, the Rugby World Cup. That was great coverage for South Africa. Right now, it's not good coverage. And I can tell you now, next election, if we continue the same pattern, people will just move away. It'll just be another, so I know South Africa. Because we can look at the Ruperts and the golfers and look at them and say, no, we have the golfers. They will always maybe go talk to a friend and the friend will talk. But these people are aging. I actually haven't seen Rupert in a while. And looking at him in the video, I realized this guy is actually, he's old. The man's old. So with these guys aging, we do not know if the patriotism and them wanting to fight for South Africa will immediately transfer down to their kids and their grandkids. Those people might have already moved on to other countries and have just basically said, South Africa is in the past for me, right? So we cannot always rely on those connections because these guys are old. So we need to really, really think about it and say, okay, yes, we are coming from a history, ANC's a liberation movement, but for ANC to work, they need to start getting the results. Donald Trump asked a good question. What are you doing about the violence? What are you doing about the crime? All right. And anyone in South Africa can answer that. Go to anywhere in the country and ask, what is the African National Congress doing about the crime issue? There's no political will for them to fix the problem. So we need to think about it because if you think about in the case of Malawi, for example, Malawi exists. People know Malawi is in the map somewhere, but it's not a factor because they're just not making things happen. South Africa can get to that point. Like I said, the next 3 elections, we will probably still make it on CNN. There would still be an interest in terms of how is a political sort of like game shifting in South Africa. And we are responsible for that part. That is our job. And then we get to Starlink, another controversial element of this entire meeting, people pointing out to the fact that it was because of Elon Musk moaning and whining like a brat. That's how this meeting even got to be set up. Starlink. All I'm going to say about it, because I know the EFF is pushing back. I think there's other unions that are also pushing back, saying Starlink must not come in. If they come in, they must play to the rules and have the BE thing. One, I will say that Elon Musk is a South African. He's born here, so he's not a foreign investor. As far as I understand, if you're a foreign investor, then you have to take a portion or empower, right? A black business owner, black South African. In the case of Elon Musk, he is a South African, right? So the same rules wouldn't necessarily apply. Just like you and I being able to open a business, he too should be able to do the same. He's a South African. So just to put that out there. But why not Starlink? People are saying no to Starlink. Why not? What's the problem with having Starlink in South Africa? Starlink is just like any other business that is coming into South Africa and competing for the market share, trying to grow. You've got loads, different styles and colors of Chinese SUVs coming into our market. There was no pushback in terms of don't come in, you're going to compete with Toyota. Don't come in, you're going to compete with Hyundai, right? We have just been given a choice. You choose the car you want, but Chinese cars are here. They're coming in numbers, in droves, competing with everyone. The story of VW and Suzuki, right? Suzuki was allowed to come in. There was no controversy around that. It was allowed to come into South Africa. And to some extent, I think Suzuki has really taken a portion of the VW market share that would be, the young women who are up and coming and it's definitely a threat there. And there was no issue. Currently, Starlink, from my research that I've done, is not necessarily coming in on a price selling point. They're not saying, we're the cheapest. From what I've looked up, Starlink is more on sort of like better connectivity. You can connect it anywhere, at the sea, in the middle of nowhere, in a cave, and because the infrastructure is different to what we have with the broadband infrastructure. So it's satellites which live in a whole other zone, and so there is that advantage in terms of the infrastructure that the Starlink is coming in from. It has been praised. It's said to be really good, fast speed, great connectivity. And also from what I'm looking at with Starlink, it's going to mainly appeal to the middle class, upper and so forth, businesses, potentially government offices and entities that could also take advantage of Starlink, especially in areas where they are having challenges with connectivity. Another observation right? Donald Trump, Ramaphosa are the two people that have the most things in common, right? They are both state leaders. They are both hated and loved to some degree for whatever reason. Ramaphosa has his fair share of backlash in South Africa for his performance. Donald Trump has his fair share of backlash for issues that are affecting the American population, right? So the two gentlemen have probably the most things in common sitting in that room. Fact number one. Now, when you look at Donald Trump, love him or hate him, that's up to you. Donald Trump seems to really be someone who listens to business. He seems to have, he's a businessman, right? He seems to have a much more easier dialogue and easier understanding of the needs of business, where business fits into your society, how business comes together. Things like your tariffs, major criticism on how we approach tariffs, but he's probably thinking, if I can get tariffs to assist me to lower my taxes on my citizens, allow my population to have more buying power, allow markets grow. Speaking on issues of buying, is it the Panama, where he wants to open up a route to allow for these trade cargo ships to get stuff to the US more quicker without him having to go around and all of that, right? I'm not going to get into the intricacies of those things. I'm not really the expert there, but I'm trying to say that Donald Trump seems to have a good grip of sort of the market-friendly guy. He's a market-friendly guy. He's business-friendly. He seems to understand. Ramaphosa, on the other hand, just does not seem to listen to business. And I'm not going to blame business at all. Business, I know there's all kinds of business forums. They're constantly in the media speaking whenever there's budget and all of these events. Meaning there are existing platforms, even if it's not necessarily one business speaking to Ramaphosa, but there are organizations that speak for business in South Africa. But he is not listening to business. There was absolutely no need for Rupert and the golfers to just bear their thoughts on a platform like that. You know what I mean? Like, it just goes to show that maybe have they not had a chance to talk to Ramaphosa prior to the meeting? But imagine how we just looked. It was a bad look, guys. It was a bad look for the golfer to speak about his experience and what he knows about this issue of farmer tax. Ramaphosa just sitting there like, bro, do you not talk to these guys? Because I've tried to say it in other videos in the past, that for a country to succeed, it's not just about people and government. It's people, it's government, it's business. The president's job as the one who leads government is to make sure they protect our lives. Number one, which again, Ramaphosa is failing at. And two, they need to protect livelihoods, right? Working with business, in the case of Ramaphosa, would solve at least 60% of his problems. He'd sleep better if he worked closely with business. And of course, it's a trade-off, right? You negotiate and all of that. Doesn't mean you are welcome in state capture. Like we get sometimes with the EFF saying, no, business is bad because if business gets involved in state capture. Well, I do have I hold the opinion that state capture would necessarily be counterproductive to sort of like the goal that business has, because most businesses have an intention to grow. They want to grow. Think of any entrepreneur that you know of. Maybe you are an entrepreneur yourself. What is most important? You want to make your profit, you want to grow. So getting involved in government issues and meddling and breaking the law and all of that just doesn't seem to align with the objective and the broader strategy that businesses have. So I don't necessarily have the fear of state capture by saying that we need to become business friendly. I understand where that might come from or why that might exist, but I think we also need to think of business and just personalize business. Think of it like someone you know, right? You've invested in a country, or you are born in that country and you've taken the risk, right? You went to the bank, you borrowed the 50 million rand, and now you're trying to build something in South Africa, right? The only thing you want is growth. Even if you engage a minister or talk to a counselor, it's to say, help me grow. When you grow, people get jobs. The president's job is taken care of because people have livelihoods. When they have livelihoods, a lot of these problems can be solved. I was very shocked, actually, myself, personally, to hear Ramaphosa speak about the fact that without jobs, there's crime. When people don't have means to make things happen, they turn to crime. So he knows this. But what is he doing about it, right? He knows this. And what I'll also say, I do tend to hear this come a lot in debates around business, government, and all of that whole thing. And I want to say that we need to think about the fact that any government regulation that exists, whether it's tax, who to hire, when to hire, climate change goals. I do not care if you think it's integral. Any regulation that is standard or put in for business to adhere to is a constraint on business. They have to work around it, because if business had it their way, they would just going into a market, do whatever they want, right? But we understand why the regulations exist, because now your business could be hurting other things, environment, blah, blah, blah. So labor laws, all of these things, every single law that exists that business has to adhere to is a constraint, right? But businesses work around these things, and businesses are quite easy to work around them all the time, right? Say, okay, cool, we need you to submit your health and safety certificate every year to show that you're compliant and you're not messing up here in your plant where you are making meat or whatever. Easy. Here's my certificate, Mr. Minister or Mr. Councillor. At the end of the year, mark me clear there, right? Life goes on. So the more regulation you put on business, the more the constraint. My last point in terms of the commentary around this massive story is on the media. The media. And I'm not sure. There seems to be some undermining going on here. And I think it's important that I really, really call this out, because I was looking at the coverage, mainly the online articles, and it's just such a strong command. It's sort of a commanding title that says misinformation. Trump got it wrong. Let's fact check this. He said this, he said that. But I'm like, we were all listening. You know what I mean? So which part of it is it's such a glaring misinformation, right? And, it's telling me it's misinformation, but not telling me actually what is misinformation about this, because it just seems to be a lot of political interpretation of the story. Like, you are interpreting it from your political standpoint and not necessarily giving me the true fact of the story. So I'm going to read you guys a piece here so that I drive the point, and I'm going to just wrap up, right? So say, here's an article from News 24. Let me just load it up, right? It's speaking to they call it a fact check Donald Trump and things that he got wrong. So this is a local publication. I saw this on Twitter. Someone shared it on Twitter. I click. I'm like, hey, what? Let's see the fact checks here. Let's get to it, right? But now, here's an interesting one. So it says here, okay, fine. This is speaking on the clip where Donald Trump showed that protest of the white crosses and the vehicles that were lined up and all of that. So they say here the footage, just to read verbatim, the footage was a farm attack protest held in September near Newcastle KZN. The demonstration was organized by local farming communities, blah, blah, blah. So this is after following a couple that was murdered in their farm in the previous month. The case was quickly resolved. Okay, nice to know. Quickly resolved. Again, I think maybe this is to say, hey, we don't have an issue with justice in South Africa. We do. We actually do. Great that this one was quickly resolved, but I wish every other case could be quickly resolved. How about that? Hey? Quickly resolved by police and serves motivation for a peaceful protest during approximately 500 symbolic crosses were erected. The protest and memorial were temporary and intended to draw attention to farm-related crime in the region. No bodies were interred at the site, and there was no direct correlation between these crosses and a verified number of farm murders in South Africa. Okay, sweet. No bodies were interred at the site. To be honest, guys, I listened quite attentively to Donald Trump. He did not necessarily, of course, spoken language, written language, different thing, right? So spoken language, you have to just piece it together because it's in the moment. Sometimes you don't actually say the right words at the time. But Donald Trump implied that the crosses, how I read the situation, implied that the crosses symbolize a life that has been lost, right? So here in this article, they are basically saying, true, that was the intention. They speak about 500 crosses. Were there 500 crosses? Do we know? Where do they get confirmation of that, right? And then not over 1,000, as Trump would have said. Hey, over 1,000, 500, it's spoken language. Sometimes we'll say, yo, that was a lot. Then how much? 2. Hey, right? So saying over 1,000 versus 500, you know what I mean? If you look at the video, it's a lot of crosses. Bottom line, a lot of crosses. So News 24 and Trump are saying the same thing. The media angle or the media element in, this day and age, I'm a young adult now, I just find it to be interesting because There's definitely some elements, where there seems to be support for the government to some extent. Because remember, they might not support the government in everything, but guys, there are some critical elements or critical angles in South Africa that immediately give advantage to the current government. I've spoken about the focus on racism and making sure that South Africans are constantly in the cycle of racism, always thinking about it, blah, 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 blah. I don't know if this seems deliberate to me, because it does seem to work very, very well for the African National Congress. So there seems to be a good support for the government agenda through the media. Things like this, for example. This is just one example that I thought, to be honest, this does feel like it's slightly undermining. This article should have not been titled fact-checking. It could have just been what happened at the Oval Office. Give me the story as it is and let me make up my mind in terms of what I heard Donald Trump saying, what I potentially missed, but don't spoon feed me to say, nothing here, move on. No, come on. You know what I mean? This issue of farmers in South Africa is not an insignificant issue. I know people want to believe that it is, but it's not an insignificant issue. It's not. Just because we are not the ones that are involved to some extent, we're not the ones that are in the issue, how do we then just say it's not an issue when people that are involved are saying that it is? So I think there's definitely a case here by what the American government with Elon Musk and what they've done. There's something here. I cannot really pinpoint to say it's either this or that. I'm not really equipped to do that, but I'm just saying there's something here. And I think the media, again, very much political agenda going on here in support of the current government. And all I'm going to say in conclusion is, if the government was performing and actually doing what the government is supposed to do, there would not be any problems. That's all I have for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember to hit the subscribe button and also like this video. I look forward to seeing you again next week when I drop a new video.